to the Power of One. Today we have a couple elected officials from the Northwest section of Philadelphia. We will discuss what they have done or what they're continuing to do to help prevent gun violence from taking place in the city of Philadelphia. We are losing so many lives in a senseless manner, and a solution must be implemented quickly. I, as well as others, are seeking solutions to end this pandemic we are all facing, gun violence. Welcome to the show, Senator Art Haywood, State Representative Stephen Kinsey, and State Representative Isabella Fitzgerald. Welcome, and thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Yes.
So we're going to get started. So as you know, we're faced with gun violence in the city of Philadelphia. What part of Northwest Philadelphia do you serve, and what have you done to prevent gun violence? Senator Haywood, we can begin with you, and then we'll go to State Rep Isabella Fitzgerald, and then we'll go to State Rep Kinsey.
Thank you so much for allowing me on this show to discuss a critical issue for our community. My district includes Chestnut Hill, Mount Airy. It also includes West Oak Lane, Germantown, and Logan. I pretty much go from Chestnut Hill all the way over to Broad in Wyoming. So it's a big part of our community in the Northwest. We've been involved in a number of actions to try to reduce gun violence in the past. We have supported a number of mentoring organizations because I believe that once we create more opportunity for young people, then it's less likely that they will be involved in gun violence or any other kind of criminal activity. So we've not only have supported mentoring and mentoring organizations, we had a hearing on gun violence prevention a couple of years ago and heard from national experts about changes that we need to make to reduce gun violence. One of those changes was funding, providing money to organizations that are on the ground in communities making a difference. And we have done so, providing support to EMIR, as well, which is a significant gun violence prevention group, Ceasefire Philadelphia, another significant gun violence prevention group, all targeted toward bringing people out of crime who are in. Just want to highlight before I turn it over to my esteemed colleagues that a small percentage of people in our community are committing to crimes. I've received reports as small as 5%, 2% of the actual population are committing these crimes. So if we can target our resources to those who have the most propensity, the greatest likelihood of being involved in gun violence, then we have the best chance of reducing it. These are some of the actions I've been involved in, but I have been involved with others, but don't want to take up all your time.
Thank you, Senator.
My turn? Thank you, Melanie. Thank you for having me and discussing an issue that's really prominent in the news right now. So I represent the 203rd Legislative District, West Oak Lane, East Oak Lane in the lower Northeast. I am, and what I've done, what I've tried to do to address the gun violence issue is I've introduced 3 pieces of legislation. 27 House Bill 2077, 2078, and 2079. And what the bills do, one of the bills is for safe storage. I was impacted by the number of children that were being harmed and hurt by, guns so readily available. So I wanted to pass legislation that, mandated that guns be stored properly and safety, so a little kid won't get a hold of the gun and do harm to themselves or other people. The other legislation is providing for a 72-hour wait for rifles, for automatic weapons, which right now there is no standard. You can ask for a rifle, purchase a rifle, and there is no waiting period. And the last thing is to have people who legally carry weapons have that stored on their driver's license, which in my opinion, cuts down the ability of excessive anything, because you ask for a person's license, is there. I mean, somebody reaching for something, it just protects everybody. So those are the things that I've done, and participated with a lot of programs and that help gun violence, like buyback programs and that sort of thing.
Thank you, State Rep.
Great. Well, Melany, first and foremost, I want to say thank you for having me on the show. And like my colleagues, and essentially because the three of us actually do work in unison. What the senator does in the Senate definitely impacts what Rep. Fitzgerald and I do in the House, and the fact that we all represent portions of the Northwest section of Philadelphia. There's great collaboration among the elected officials from the Northwest. I happen to represent the 201st Legislative District, which includes parts of Germantown, East Germantown, parts of West Oak Lane, parts of Olney, and parts of Logan. And I've been in office now for 7.5 years, it'll be 8 years at the conclusion of this particular session. But like my colleagues, I can tell you that there's over 40 pieces of legislation that we have in the House. I've co-sponsored at least 30 of those 40 pieces of legislation. In addition, I'm the prime sponsor of a large piece of legislation that deals with carrying guns at rallies and so forth on. But in addition to that, my belief is that it's a collaborative effort. It's not going to be just legislators. It's not going to be just law enforcement. It's going to take the whole village, so to speak, to really address this issue. I can tell you that my colleagues and I were just recently held a public safety Zoom meeting with the 14th district, and we had it right here in the Northwest community. We had over 100 folks that participated in that conversation. We had experts from the Annie Casey Foundation. We had Chief Inspector of Homicide for the City of Philadelphia. We actually had boots on the ground organizations, as well as just citizens who were concerned, and everybody coming together to talk about this issue, what has been working, what has not been working. And even though we've seen the rise of guns, as Rep. Fitzgerald mentioned earlier, we had a few gun turn-in events. In fact, just had one just last month in the Northwest. And every gun that's turned in is another gun that's off the street. In addition to that, like the senator mentioned, we collaborate with boots on the ground organizations. EMIR, your organization, for instance, have worked with us in the past. Mental Care of Germantown, the Lifers program. These were the gentlemen who were previously incarcerated at Graterford, who were also giving us some feedback and some information as to what we can do. So it's going to take a collaborative effort, and my colleagues and I are continuing to work to establish that. And in fact, on the 23rd of this month, we're having a Zoom town hall meeting with the 35th Police District as well. So we're trying to cover every single portion of the Northwest, bringing folks together to have a conversation about what we need to do, from law enforcement to Johnny and Joe who are on the street. And we're also bringing in a component of workforce development as well. All of these things are important to have to try to stem the tide of the violence that's taking place throughout our city.
All three of you represent different areas. So when you look at State Rep Kinsey, you're looking at West Oak Lane, you're looking at Germantown, East and West part of Germantown, Logan. Those are areas where a lot of the shootings are taking place. Senator Haywood, you have a piece of yours is Chestnut Hill. There's not a lot of shootings that are taking place in Chestnut Hill. State Rep Fitzgerald, you're right in my backyard, which is West Oak Lane. I'm born, raised, and still reside in West Oak Lane, and the shootings have increased so much. I've never seen anything like this. All of us are old school, and at one time, females were off limits and children were off limits. That's no more. So each of you tell me, why do you think Chestnut Hill does not see what the 14th Police District sees, does not see what the 35th Police District sees? And even with the 5th Police District, I don't know if you handle that, Senator Haywood. So that's Roxborough, East Falls, Manioc. They're not seeing a rise in shootings as well. Why do you think it is just certain parts of Northwest, also certain parts of just Philadelphia, where we see these shootings that are taking place?
Sure, I'd be glad to respond to that. And let me say where I think it's not and what it is. First of all, I do not think it's poverty. There's plenty of people who have no money and are in poverty who are not shooting. Just because you're in poverty doesn't mean you're shooting and killing. So let me be clear about that.
I agree.
do think, however, I want to clarify that. Opportunity is a big difference. And so individuals in Chestnut Hill, they've got opportunity on the education side. They have opportunity on the employment side. They got opportunity all around them. However, in East Germantown, parts of West Oak Lane, parts of Logan, West Philly, Southwest Philly, the opportunity is so much more limited. We talked to John Wetzel, who's over the corrections department. He shared with me that many of the people who are in prison would not be there if they could read. Reading is a key to loss of opportunity, getting on the wrong track. So I believe that the core challenge that we have, that in part explains the condition, is expanding opportunity for those who have the highest propensity for criminal conduct. We can identify them. We can target services, employment, mentoring toward them. That is part of the solution. I hope that was yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. State Rep Isabella Fitzgerald.
So I'd like to agree with the senator for the most part. Senator, thank you. But I see it where violence persists. I see where there's a lack of hope, belief that there's no future. And it's not just among the perpetrators, but among the victims. I do agree that unemployment, underemployment, and where there's perceived that there's no future and few opportunity. I mean, it allows the violence to persist. We need, we need to address that. I think, it would be helpful. And I believe that if we provide the resources, it can make a difference.
Great.
Thank you. State Rep Kinsey.
Yeah, and I think my colleagues both hit on something that's really pertinent. When the senator talks about limited opportunities and lack of education, I mean, I went to Germantown High School. Germantown High School closed, I think they closed their doors around 2013. I was first elected in office and worked feverishly with local folks to try to keep it open. On the flip side of that, we recognized that Germantown, at the time of its closing, unfortunately, 50% of the student body were not graduating for various reasons, probably lack of attendance and so forth on. I think that lack of education limits a person's ability for opportunities. I believe that the more educated you are, then the more opportunities and options that you'll have to go through. And that's just my belief. I also believe that, when I look at the pockets of my community, the communities that I represent that actually show a large percentage of gun violence, when we talk to 14th District Captain Smith or Captain Zimmerman from the 35th District, one of the things that they're sharing with us is that, social media plays a part too. Social media, back when I was coming out, we didn't have social media. So things where there was beef or something, it happened between individuals or the word got out on the street. I mean, now you got folks that are going to social media, posting things and encouraging folks to take violence, to take action. I mean, so it's out there on social media, and some of these young folks are gullible enough where they see it, oh, that's my boy, I'm gonna get him, I'm gonna go down my boy. I mean, so it's really crazy. I mean, and then what we're also seeing is the rise of gangs again. When you go up in Chestnut Hill, I don't know of any gang ever since, listen, I'm 61, I don't know of any gang ever being located in Chestnut Hill, but you come down to Germantown, you got Brickyard, Haines Street, Dogtown, you go up West Oak Lane, you got Hill and so forth on. So we're starting to see a rise of these gang activities. And unfortunately, the old school gangsters who are no longer doing this, there's a disconnect between some of the younger folks. So we need to find a way to reconnect with our communities and embrace these young folks and help them get back on track and create these opportunities that are so limited today.
That's true. And the gangs have changed from when we were coming up. they were neighborhoods. Now they're not neighborhoods, they're actually blocks.
Yeah.
So a lot has changed. But let me ask you another question, in all three of you. All of us have been in multiple meetings. The thing that bothers me is that the people that are at these meetings are you and I. I don't see any gang members at the meeting. I don't see any of the people within the community that's wreaking havoc in the meeting. I personally think that's what's missing. How do we reach the gang members? How do we reach the shooters? How do we reach those people that are creating havoc in our neighborhoods? How do we get them to come to our meetings?
That's a good question.
Again, I do not think they're going to come to the meetings, nor do I expect them to come to the meetings. And we got to go to them with some solutions for their lives. We got to go to them with some job opportunities, as Rep. Kinsey mentioned. We got to go to them with some mentoring. We got to go to them with some spiritual guidance. You mentioned the shooting of children and women. That's a spiritual problem, but I don't expect them to show up on any Zooms.
Okay, and I do want to clarify something. With Northwest Victim Services, we do that. We actually go to Temple University Hospital, and we're seeing those victims within 24 hours of the victimization. We work out of Einstein Hospital.
That's it.
So, of course, because of the COVID, things have shifted, but not only do my victim advocates do it, I do it. My victim advocates know I wouldn't ask them to do anything that I would not do. So I am boots on the ground. When those things happen, I am in the neighborhood, and we're not doing anything for show. We don't get in front of any camera. So all of these high profile cases that occur, we're there for those. We're even there for the ones that are not high profile cases. So the community knows that we care, and we're very, very visual. So I agree. I don't think I asked how they would come to the meeting, but my question is, how can we touch them and get them engaged? But I think we need to ask the question, what is their need? Do they sell drugs because they have to, or are they selling drugs because they need to feed their family? So I think we need to ask that question.
You have to meet people where they are. I know, a lot of, I think I heard somebody talk about, old heads, talking to, the younger guys. And I don't, where they will listen, you have to make the effort. I think that you have to, you have to meet them where they are. And the other thing is, I just think that, I don't know, you have to make it comfortable somehow for the people in the community who know these things are happening to be able to somehow, give the information, so we'll know who the young people are that are carrying the weapons, that are shooting. You know what I'm saying? I just think that you have to meet people where they are and empower people to speak. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think that that's really a tough one. We had a community meeting, and we were able to touch some of the young folks because there was a shooting that took place about 2 years ago, right around Pomona and Cherokee Street. Kids were on the porch, car came by, shot up the porch, young girl died. We were able to get the young sister's boyfriend. I'll just say his first name is we call him Sean. And Sean came out to one of our meetings and made a plea to young folks, we got to stop this, y'all. We got to come together. We have to have conversations. So more recently, started working with Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity, which has a Achievement Academy. These are young men. I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. So through our Achievement Academy, we actually have a targeted audience, but we have them in a safe place where we can have conversation. Before COVID struck, we were working with some of the youth at Martin Luther King High School and Imhotep Charter High School, planning a forum that was going to be directed by these young folks, school-age kids, to have this conversation. Unfortunately, COVID hit, and we're now going back to the table to try to find another way to readjust it. But I agree, when we have these community meetings, they don't just show up. We have to get parents or somebody who knows somebody to talk with them and just have to say, hey, come on by, offer some opinions. But also recognize that, folks don't want to be seen as snitches, or they don't want to be seen at a meeting and then, there's some type of retaliation because they're talking. So I think that we have to develop a strategy that's comforting for them, but also where they recognize the importance of sharing information, because, you know, as we keep seeing the numbers that where we are today as it relates to violence and folks dying at the hands of gunfire, they very well recognize that that could have been them. It still can be them. And until we sort of reinvest and invest ourselves with this situation, it's going to continue on. Cops can't do it by themselves. Elected officials can't do it by themselves. We all have to do this in a collaborative fashion. And the young boys, the younger folks have a tendency, you know, when information's out on the street, they know about it before we do. So we got to get that information so we can stop some of this stuff that's taking place right now.
That's true. And you just touched on something as far as like the snitching and people saying something. That's real. So not only do we go to the hospitals, we're actually in the criminal justice center 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. So it's heartbreaking to see a victim that has to testify right next to the defendant, that has to testify right next to that defendant's family. And people are very scared to testify. So I understand the law enforcement side where they need people to say something so they can get the shooter off the street. But what happens when they get the shooter off the street and the shooter makes bail? Like Larry Krasner was on the show 2 weeks ago, and he spoke about that. So this person is now afraid for their life because the shooter actually made bail. So these are issues that we need to think about. How do we keep people safe if they're going to say something? So those are major issues. What about Miss Jones, who lives up the block, this elderly victim who was victimized, but she's afraid to say something because the perpetrator actually lives on her block. So these are things that we have to think about that are real. And these are the reasons why some people don't go to law enforcement. These are the reasons why people don't want to go to court and testify, because it's scary. What's going on in our backyard is scary. We actually go into the Philadelphia schools and we educate students on victimization and bullying. And what was heartbreaking to me is that a lot of the young people, boys and girls, would say to me, Ms. Nelson, you either got to be a predator or a prey. Some of them are not. A lot of them are not afraid to die young, and some of them expect to die young.
Yeah.
So, Senator Haywood, I understand what you said, that when looking at the statistics, it may seem small, but when we're looking at a child who was shot during a shootout, that's alarming. A 49-year-old victim that I'm helping now was laying in his bed after coming home from work, and there was a shootout on Shelton Avenue. And a bullet comes through his bedroom window and hits him in his leg. So this stuff is alarming. So my last question to you is this. We are faced with the COVID-19 pandemic. And the hope for that is that this will be over in about a year or so. But we're also faced with a gun violence pandemic. So when do you think this gun violence pandemic will end?
The gun violence was here before the pandemic, and I guess it'll be here after the pandemic. But I think a lot of us have said something over, during this conversation, and I think we have to do all those things. I think that we have to meet people where they are. I really think that we have to empower people. I think that we have to provide the resources. We have to provide the jobs. We have to provide, the education. I think that we have to continue doing what we're doing and do more of it. Do you know what I'm saying? I think that the pandemic has kind of exacerbated, made everything more, I guess because we sit at home and we watch it.
Right.
But we have to continue, and we have to be consistent with what we're doing. Sometimes it seems that, we get on a roll, we put all these resources out and we do all this stuff. And then when things calm down, we calm down, and we can't, because everything still exists. So we have to do more of what we're doing. We have to do more what you do, Melany. We have to do what Steve was doing, more educating, trying to, educate young people. We have to do what the police or the DA's office is doing, going around and doing those mobile job things. We have to do all of that. And,
Right.
We just have to continue doing what we're doing. That's what I think.
Thank you. State Rep Kinsey?
Yeah, when you talk about the COVID-19, I think most folks are aware that, Congress passed the CARES Act, and that allowed for some additional resources to come down to the various states. When we talk about the gun violence being a pandemic, so to speak, we have to take the approach of, a serious approach, just like with the COVID-19. And what I mean by that is that we have to make sure that there are resources, but not only resources have to be available, we also have to make sure that it's going to the right organizations. Unfortunately, sometimes things get caught in the bureaucracy. And so, I was thinking about the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, in which we directed some dollars there at the state level. Well, talking to organizations, they're telling me that it's tough to get those dollars to filter down. Well, that was the purpose when we voted on that. We voted on that. We made monies available to help the grassroots organizations like yours, organizations that got their boots on the ground. We're finding out now that the way that we intended may not be the way that the money's rolling out. So I think that we need to go back and have a conversation with the governor as well as the commission. But I think that in regards to ending it, unfortunately, when we look over the past 10 years of gun violence, we saw there was an increase, then there was a decrease, and then there was a rise again. And, the fact that we're at 32% above last year, which were historic numbers, it's not going to decrease until folks get fed up, tired of it, and not ask for action, but demand action. And when I say demand it, they got to be a part of the solution as well. So, I think, in my opinion, that we could probably put an end to this pandemic, and I'm talking about the gun violence pandemic, probably within the course of a year. It's going to be some strategic planning. It's going to be some, all hands on deck from an educational standpoint, from a workforce development standpoint, from a trauma counseling standpoint. I think that we need to make sure that those resources are circulating in the communities that need them, not in just organizations that's administering those dollars. So, my belief, my hope would be that, we're going to have high numbers this year, there's no doubt about it, in 2020. But I believe that if we strategically put, all of our efforts towards ending this pandemic, that by 2021, there's no doubt that we can see those numbers go back down. So that's my belief, that's my hope. We just have to make sure that folks understand the importance of it, not just by watching TV and saying, oh, I'm concerned, or seeing that something's happening in North Philly, but it's not happening in your direct neighborhood, because it happened there, it can happen here. So
right. Thank you so much. Our Senator Art Haywood, I believe that you're back. Real quick, can you tell me what your hope is in ending gun violence?
Pandemics this summer are aligned, and they're partially aligned because of the Great Depression or recession that we're in. But I have tremendous hope that we can address the gun violence pandemic. And that's because in other cities, they have had success. And that success has come from creating alliances between groups like yours, Melany, to work with police departments, to work with social services, to work with groups like Amir, and come up with a hub approach. There's been success around the nation that we can adopt and apply right here in the Northwest.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I truly appreciate it. And I am in this fight with you. So whatever you need, please let me know, and I'll make myself available. Thank you so much.
Thank
you
you
for having us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode on gun violence. Violence has touched so many families' lives and destroyed so many dreams. It is my hope that gun violence in the city of Philadelphia will come to an immediate halt. We have to love one another, we have to care for one another, and we have to show compassion one to another. I encourage you to help someone in need. That may make a difference in them changing a choice they would have made. Peace and blessings to you and your family.